Welcome to Season 5 of Swiss Impact with Banerjee. I'm Sveta.
And I am Ben. The topic of Season 5 is impactful investments. How can you make a difference with your capital?
Our guests, who are managing impact investment funds, business owners, thought leaders, will empower you to invest with impact.
In this season, we will showcase various impact investment funds who are contributing to SDGs, better known as Sustainable Development Goals as defined by the United Nations.
There is no excuse. Shift your capital to create positive change in our world. Your children will be happier, you will feel fulfilled, and make money.
We will broadcast every Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. Central European Time, here on Swiss Impact with Banerjee. You get more when you give back.
So always invest with impact.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone.
Welcome back to our episode 2 of Season 5, which is dedicated to impactful investment opportunities. Once again, we'd like to give a special thanks to those members of our audience who have been supporting the businesses and funds coming on our TV show, either by investing or partnering with them.
So please keep watching our TV, our program, and share it with your friends and family who are interested to learn or invest into the amazing and fastest growing sector of impact and sustainable investment.
Yes, and you can watch us, of course, on TV, our TV show you can watch on YouTube channel, but of course you can also listen to us on podcasts like Spotify, you can watch us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and other social media, whatever is your favorite. Today, I've been teaching at the university some early stage businesses on financial planning, impact investing, and impact measurement. And they all are very eager to find investors once they are ready to make positive impact on our planet. And, it's very inspiring to see that our message is reaching and spreading around the globe, that maybe even in 6 or 12 months, those startups will come on our TV show and present their projects. Ben, I'd like to hear your story now.
So it seems our TV show, like Sveta mentioned, is really having a global impact, especially for businesses and funds. Just this Monday, I was having a meeting with one of the largest Asian venture capitalist fund, which is really not known for impactful or sustainability oriented or anything like that. It seems that they are not only watching our programs, but whenever they find a fund or a project which gets them interested, they immediately have a meeting in their investment committee about investing in our programs. So once again, businesses and funds, if you are looking for investments, please contact us. But of course, you have to be impactful.
And absolutely. Businesses and funds with deep impact are welcome to come to our program and get funded as soon as possible with our help.
And last week, I was speaking at one of the events where representative of many different African nations were speaking. And we all knew that climate change is impacting the Southern Hemisphere more, or in fact, disproportionately than the Northern Hemisphere. We are only hearing negative stories and facts. But during this event, I was so positively surprised to discover that so much solutions to this impending disaster is coming from Africa also. One after another amazing projects and innovative ideas are coming from there. And in fact, they have been in the forefront of joining Global Steering Group of Impact Investment, chaired by our previous guest, Sir Ronald Cohen. So while more and more African countries are joining, I'm a bit ashamed to say that Switzerland still has not been able to join the GSG group. And we are still discussing and talking about it. Maybe because the financial institutions here have too much influence and power over the decision-making authorities. But anyway, due to this background of the amazing guest today, I want to leave my story here and listen to him.
Thank you, Ben. But I still have hope that Switzerland will join the global steering group of impact investment, which is dedicated to make impact investment the new normal on the planet. So I hope we will join, our country will join the group soon, and also take true actions toward transformation of the financial sector in Switzerland to true impact investment. It has all the powers and resources to become a leading country for sustainability and impact. So, hope Schweiz, we say.
Oh, before I forget, I completely forgot. Um, I was being interviewed on a TV panel discussion beginning of this week, and there were some Fox News educated speakers who mentioned that climate change and global warming are propaganda. And very coincidentally, I was reading one of the Chinese newspapers today. In the province of Shenzhen, the CO2 emission per unit of GDP has dropped by 70% in 2020 compared with the level in 2005. Also, energy consumption per unit of GDP stands at one-third of the nation's average in 2020, and CO2 emission per unit of GDP were one-fifth of the nation's average. So, of course, they have achieved this with using a lot of many tools. But anyway, here I stop.
Okay, thank you for finishing with positive news. And now I'd like to welcome our guest, Mr. Pavan Sukhdev, the founder and CEO of GIST and former president of WWF International. So, Pavan, please join us.
Greetings.
Hi. Hi,
Sveta.
welcome, Pavan. How are you doing? Where are you?
Very good. Well, I'm actually at one of my offices in GIST, which is in the same building as IUCN and WWF. We are in a small town called Gland in Switzerland.
Yeah, I know that one.
Oh, I didn't know.
Well, maybe this is because I'm also Swiss, right? Anyway, Pavan, I'd like to introduce you to our audience first. And of course, we'd love to hear what is GIST later on, this magic word. So, Pavan is a scientist by education, international banker by training, and environmental economist by passion. Years of work in sustainability and the invisible economics of nature led you to appointment to head the United Nations Green Economy Initiative, and also to lead the G8+5 study, TEEB, which is the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity. Pavan was also awarded by the McCluskey Fellowship by Yale University. He wrote his book, Corporation 2020, Transforming Businesses for Tomorrow's World. So you promote tomorrow's corporations, and this is the ones with positive rather than negative externalities as the engine of tomorrow's inclusive green economy. And you are, of course, the founder and CEO of GIST, which is now, we reveal it, a pioneering data and analyst company that brings together world-renowned sustainability expertise with technology and big data to help investors and companies measure value and benchmark company impacts across all four capitals: natural, human, social, and produced. So this is very important contribution. And what I also wanted to add, that Pavan also served on the boards of Conservation International, the Global Reporting Initiative, very important one, the Stockholm Resilience Center, and on the TEEB Advisory Board, which won several awards for his work, including the Blue Planet Prize and Tiller Prize. So, wow, a lot of achievements. I'm sure I didn't mention even half of them, but that's really amazing. Thank you for joining us today, Pavan.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your kind words. Good to be with you guys.
Thank you. So, Pavan, we would like to know your journey from physics and banking, and you ended up in the sustainability and thought leader. How did you make that journey?
Well, I guess the transition from physics to finance was not unusual for a young Indian, because not every physicist from India becomes a physicist. They become, engineers or bankers. And to go from banking to the economics of nature, I think it was basically the economics that I had read as part of my banking qualification, which made me question the basics of what we were doing. In physics, there were no externalities. If it was really large, it's astrophysics. That was my subject. It was really tiny. It was atomic, even tinier, nuclear physics, even tinier particle physics. Physics didn't exclude anything. There was no externalities. And I couldn't get my head around, why do these guys need externalities in economics? Or if they have them, why can't they just investigate them? It seemed that externalities would be left, chapter 24 of a 25 chapter book. And that didn't seem to make sense to me. And it was a nagging question. So I joined a bank, as one does, and made a career of it. And the question continued to nag me and became even more irritating when my elder daughter, Mahima, was born, because she loved nature. And I could see that, yes, look at this. She loves nature. I'm taking her to the local park or to the gardens and to nearby forest reserves. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. She loves it. And it's free. So there's a clear difference between value and price. And nobody seems to get this obvious thing. And it's, again, positive externalities of nature, right? So, or the benefits and the enjoyment we get from nature, which do not carry price tags. And they can't, because they are public goods. The basic difference between private and public goods was not understood by 99.9% of the people that I met. And I just couldn't get my head. It's so obvious. And yet, so this is what drove my passion for environmental economics. And I started reading up about it and, writing to the people whose books I was reading. And they were just exceptionally kind to me. Professor Pierce actually gave me an audience, and we corresponded. And he reviewed my first 2 monographs. Sadly, he died in 2005 after that. But, it was just a journey of exploration. And I was doing this as a hobby. So I do my day job as a banker, eventually a managing director of Deutsche. And in the evenings and the weekends, unlike other bankers who went and played 9 or 18 rounds of golf, I would basically open up my books and read and write. So that's my story. And now, of course, it's become a business.
It's very strange, because I have a bit of a similar background like you.
We have it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Only been there at the bank.
only I'm not as intelligent to you, but I also started with physics, but I ended up in quantum physics and material sciences.
Right.
So you went to astrophysics, I went to the other extreme. But there you have more about a connection between everything. So, and then, of course, banking, very tiny part, but further it was mainly business and investments. This was a question I wanted to ask you, that my experience, because I have been busy with climate change, global warming since a long time, and looking through it from the prism of government policies, regulations and everything, it seems to be more visible in the developed countries than in the emerging countries. Although the emerging countries are the ones which are feeling the impact the most. Yet in this sector, the Indians are sort of dominating. If you look at Dr. Pachauri from IPCC, Dr. Amritya Sen, Dr. Abhijit Banerjee, yourself, do you have an opinion why it is like that Indians are dominating in this field?
Well, I think firstly, let's be humble and say that, look, 1 in 7 people on Earth are Indian, right? So
that's true.
it shouldn't. It's a good thing.
You are just many also. It's not, one of the aspects.
Yeah. So the good thing is that, of course, the tradition of education in India has clearly led us in this direction. And people marvel about the performance of India as an economy. And I keep saying that this is basically our mothers, because they kept telling me, at least mine certainly did, work hard, study well, do well. And it was that constant barrage of, oh my God, here she goes again. But mothers were right. We owe a lot of our human capital, if you like, as we call it nowadays in GIST. We owe a lot of the massive human capital of GIST to this cultural dimension of life in India. And of course, some of that has gone into interesting areas like economics. Amartya Sen, amazing people like him, and by the way, others as well. Partha Dasgupta, who is actually one of the world's, probably the world's leading environmental economist. And so many.
Before we dive into hardcore, Pavan, what was your most important lesson you have learned in life?
Oh, most important lesson, I would say, is just find purpose. The means shall follow. And by the way, this is a quotation from Mahatma Gandhi.
Mhm.
And it's part of my life as well. And when I had sort of conceived of the idea of the green accounting project for Indian states, and I was just scared of moving ahead with it. And how do I do this? I mean, the people I need, where will the money come from? And my God, and my friends who want to help me, one is in teaching in the US and the other is in India, and I'm in London. How is this going to work, and so on. And I was driving down a road in Mumbai from work. And there was a signboard supported, I think it was a Tata Group company that had put out a public interest advertising signboard, which had just a little outline image of Gandhi and these words, "Find purpose, the means shall follow." It hit me almost like I had an accident. And
The universe gave you a
they
sign,
gave me a sign. So this,
answer, right? Mhm.
and I was trying to figure out how will we start a project in Chennai, because Rajiv says, my dear friend who was a partner in this, but he says that the best environmental economist is actually living in Chennai. So I literally after that picked up the phone and spoke with Yesu, another friend and acquaintance of mine who was a central banker, and I was a banker in those days. And he was living in Chennai, and I knew that he had gone home because he'd just taken early retirement from the Reserve Bank. And I said, Yesu, hi, how are you? Usual stuff. And he said, so young man, what are you doing? So I explained this project that I had conceived of. He says, that's fascinating. I'd help you. What do you need? And it was amazing. I just one phone call, and the trust had been set up. People had been hired. Within a few months, we had started. Find purpose, the means shall follow.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that. I think this is what many entrepreneurs are lacking. They have these ideas to change the world, but they never dare to make this step when then the means start coming for the project. So that's very great.
Or they overthink. They think so much about the things that can go wrong or the means they will never have that they don't follow the purpose.
And sometimes I feel people, and a lot of people, not just the entrepreneurs, suffer from what I call the Hamlet complex. Famous quotation from Hamlet, oh, the time is out of joint, oh cursed spite, that ere I was born to set it right. Excuse me, Prince Hamlet, you should be thankful that you were born to set it right. Go ahead and fix it, for God's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, don't be victim. Absolutely. Yeah, you wanna go ahead, or should I?
Okay. This is one of my depressing questions.
Okay, go
I'm going
ahead.
to ask a
It's
depressing.
you.
So what in your opinion is the present situation of the world environment? I mean, if you read the recent WMO report, the reports coming out of COP26, WEF, everything is so negative. Do you see something positive somewhere?
Well, let me be blunt. It is deeply dangerous. Okay.
Yeah.
So just a few months back, literally 2 months back in March, we heard that around the same time, a measuring station in the Antarctic had recorded temperatures 40 degrees Celsius higher than the average. And around the same time, the North Pole, it was 30 degrees higher than average. 30 degrees Celsius. Sveta, we keep hearing about targets of 1.5 degrees and will it be 2 degrees? Excuse me, this is horrendous. This is climate's canary in the coal mine that is singing loudly, crying, and we are not listening to it. That's dangerous, right? And then, of course, you have biodiversity loss going on at the same time, and then you have water scarcities arising, and these effects, these impacts of our economy are already there. So, I'm afraid the news is not that good, but I do believe in the Earth system's resilience. And I just believe that if we could just stop forcing the climate in a certain direction, just take our feet off the accelerator for a change, systems do correct. And I have deep faith in the Earth system's resilience. But the point is, will we give it a chance to act, or will we just be constantly stupid and hurtle ourselves towards planetary boundaries the way we are doing right now?
Yeah. I was talking to one of my colleagues who is now leading the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization. That's Dr. Petri Talas. And I was telling him the last 30, 40 years, we have been saying the same. But somehow, if you look at the emission, and if you look, it's just going up and up and up. So what you are just mentioning about taking the gas, we are seeming to be giving more and more and more gas.
We are accelerating it. In fact, exactly. It's ironic, right? I use the image of putting your foot on the accelerator. It is about gas. It's about fossil fuels, fossil oil and gas, fog, right? I like, and someone I connected on LinkedIn said this, and you can check out that, why do we call it natural gas? It's unnatural to be burning it and doing it and putting down pipes 2 and 3 kilometers deep to get at that gas. The fog has to stop. Fossil oil and gas, right? Describe it.
Yeah, thank you guys for this depressing news. But let's talk about WWF, so the Worldwide Fund for Nature. Because many people know there is WWF in Switzerland and other countries, but what is WWF International? As you've been the president of it, I'm sure you know it best.
Well, I don't know the best, but I'm certainly very, very proud and humbled that I was given the opportunity to be their president, and my term ended in as all presidents do after 4 years. But WWF is a network, first thing to understand, and they are a network for the people. So what WWF has done literally over the last 61 years is explain the importance of nature to people, explain the value of nature to people, explain why it's their responsibility to engage and do something about it. And that's a huge task. And it's a network, I call it, because it's basically 34 different organizations who are in countries. So they are national organizations and national NGOs, and they're working together. And WWF International coordinates the activities of those 34 organizations. And by the way, they don't just operate in their countries, they also operate outside the countries.
Yes.
So the total number of countries is more than 100 where WWF operates. So it is one of the world's largest environmental NGO networks today.
So if I understand you correctly, so you have WWF Switzerland, Netherlands, different, but Switzerland can also operate in Africa, and Netherlands can operate in Asia.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And the US, they also have various different operations. And Switzerland, there's actually 2 Switzerlands. There's a country, WWF Switzerland, and then there's with WWF International, which is purely a coordinating and organizing and operating entity as well, because it looks after a large number of projects in Africa and Asia and so on. So it's a complex network, but International has the role of ensuring policies are coordinated, ensuring that the so-called practice groups of WWF, we have I should say we have 9 different practice groups. And the practice group is kind of a knowledge network, like within WWF. It doesn't matter whether you're in USA or the Netherlands or India or China or wherever you may be. But if there is a question on freshwater, then Stuart, who is the network leader on knowledge on freshwater, and his team, who are kind of all over the place, right? They are in many different countries, but they connect on the theme which they are in charge of, which is freshwater. Freshwater systems are really important. Some of the biggest losses of biodiversity happen in freshwater systems. So clearly, the purpose of WWF, protection of nature, is got to be focused on 9 different practices. And freshwater will have a consistent set of messages, no matter where you are, who you are speaking with in WWF. So that's how the organization works. These 9 practices have to be coordinated by International. That's how this whole thing works.
Right. Wow, that's amazing that countries can collaborate, right? If they are united by a mission. And Pavan, could you tell us more about GIST? What is that one?
Well, GIST is a company which began its life as a trust called GIST as well. And, you hear of many companies that set up an NGO. This is an NGO that set up a company. How's that? And the reason we set up a company is because our research on green accounting was getting a lot of interest from the private sector and from asset managers and so on. And we knew we had to work on company sustainability, not just governments and country sustainability. And we knew we can't do that as an NGO, especially in India. So we set up a company. Today, GIST has gone through a few evolutions, and it is a company at the intersection of sustainability and technology. And we use technology and big data to be able to answer the most difficult questions, and ironically, the simplest of questions, which is this company sustainable or not? And we answer that through deep analysis of its impacts. That's what GIST does. It does it for the company itself. And very often, if we are asked by investors, we search the web for data about the companies in their portfolio and provide the same kind of answers to the investors as well. So we actually calculate the impacts of a company, knowing fully well that a company is sustainable only if its impacts on human capital, on its employees, on natural capital, that is the wealth of the future generations, on social capital, all of the relationships and institutions in society, and of course on produced capital, which finally belongs to the shareholders. If all those four capitals impacts of a company are positive, plus, 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 then it doesn't matter how many companies there are like that, be it 10 or 10,000 or 10 million, the world is a better place. So therefore, this company is sustainable. And we calculate how sustainable is a company. Is it plus, 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 or is it plus, plus, minus, minus, and how much? Or is it plus, minus, minus, minus? Okay, that happens too.
You just mentioned the term green economy. Can you explain very shortly to our audience what you mean by that?
Sure. A green economy is a direction for the economy in which you find that ecological risks are declining, which means the loss of nature, biodiversity, ecosystems is declining, where the environmental risks are declining, which means chemical pollution, climate change, and so on, where equity is increasing. In other words, the gaps between the rich and the poor are getting narrower, not because the rich are getting poorer, but because the poor are getting richer. And lastly, because well-being overall is increasing. In other words, the economic measure of well-being is actually increasing. So if these four things are happening in an economy, that's a green economy. And please note, this is not just about the environment. It's about the environment. It's about ecology. This is nature, the ecosystems. It's about equity, and it's about growth. So it's all of those four combined. If that is happening, yes, that's a green economy.
And are you only talking about the footprint, or are you also taking here the handprint in?
So I'm not.
Now you need to say what do you mean by handprint and
You'll have to explain what you mean
footprint,
by handprint.
because
Oh,
not
sorry,
everyone knows.
Sorry. So
I think I know what
footprint.
yeah.
Footprint is what the damage we are creating by every production company driving a car. What handprint is something activities which is doing good, which
Yes.
is maybe improving the forest or improving the nature or the society. So are you also calculating the handprint of the companies?
Absolutely. And the way that we calculate that is with the four capitals, right? So the handprint can be positive on human and social capital. If you're looking after your employees well, training them, developing them, increasing their skills, they will increase their personal wealth and capacities, and they'll stay healthy. That's good for society. That's a positive handprint. Social capital, if you're supporting NGOs or maybe creating some CSR programs and acting responsibly towards the communities in the countries in which you operate, you're creating positive social capital, good relationships. Even in nature, if you are, for instance, a forestry company that is sustainable or an agricultural business that is sustainable, you can create a positive natural handprint. But typically, that doesn't happen. Typically, most companies have negative environmental footprints, GHG emissions, and some of them have negative ecological footprints as well. So yeah, it's a combination of negatives and positives. We calculate anything that's material, right? So if it's significant, if it's important, if people can say that, oh my God, that was terrible, or oh my God, that was wonderful, and they see that there's a value created or a value destroyed, that means it's material. If it's material to any stakeholder, anyone with an interest in the company's activities, that's what we calculate.
Okay. Another topic we learned from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry in his book, The Little Prince, The Little Prince in English, right? Le Petit Prince in French. What is the essential is invisible to the eye, right? So do you think that is also true for subtle biological interactions and invisible values of businesses and their operations?
Yes, sad but true. A lot is invisible. So some of the largest footprints, if you like, negative impacts of corporations are invisible. Climate change. And now we are beginning to get, thanks to the efforts of many NGOs, including WWF, and the efforts of the CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Project, which has expanded tremendously. We're getting people to see the negative impacts of their greenhouse gas footprints, but we are still not seeing the negative impacts of air pollution. Every year, 8 billion people on average, according to the WHO, die because of air pollution, which is coming largely from industrial emissions. Do we know which companies are causing that? Do we know who to blame or who to control to prevent that from happening? No. Well, we do, because we do those calculations, but do people generally know where this is coming from? No. So there is a lack of knowledge, there is a lack of research, there is a lack of information, and there's definitely a lack of communication to people. And I think this needs to be corrected.
Mhm. Pavan, I find it amazing that NGOs are now sharing the knowledge about impact measurement with corporates. I mean, it's just starting. Do you also believe that this will become a new normal to measure impact? There is impact management projects, which is trying to make it really standards like accounting standards, so impact measurement standards. Do you see this coming as well, or what's your opinion on that?
It's Sweta, it's moving in that direction. I mean, of course, I would love it to move much faster, but I'm pleased that it's moving in that direction. I'd written about this in my book, Corporation 2020, but that was 10 years ago. And if you had asked me then, which do you think will happen first? When I talked about changing taxation, changing finance, changing advertising, and changing performance measurement, which is basically what we are talking about here. I would have said, well, the best bets are the finance side and the advertising side, and I would have been wrong. In fact, the accountants have proved faster, ironically, than all of the others, be they the tax people in finance ministries or be they the central bankers. So it's interesting today that we are getting movement thanks to all of these collaborations, thanks to the efforts of the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity, becoming the T Business Coalition, then forming the Natural Capital Coalition, which then triggered off the World Business Council right here next door in Geneva, I should say, starting the Social and Human Capital Coalition, and then merging itself and then becoming the Capitals Coalition. And around the same time, the Impact Management Project began. And then, there was the whole effort with the IIRC, the International Integrated Reporting Council from 2012 onwards. They published in 2014, coming out and saying that, look, we need to measure performance in 4 capitals, 5 capitals, and so on. So, there's a lot of effort that's been going on over the last decade. And I'm very pleased that, thankfully, this is pulling itself together. Of late, I was speaking with the people from the TNFD, the Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosure, and they said they were appreciative of all the effort. They said it's really good that this exists. We don't have to, try and invent something new. We can use all this that has happened. That's good. We need to pull in the same direction. We don't want to compete here. Collaboration is the answer.
Absolutely. And could you share what type of corporates can get the services from GIST to measure impact? Do you only do it for big corporations or also SMEs? So what is the kind of typical client of yours?
Yeah, well, it's quite bizarre, to be honest, because we have had clients from the world's largest chemicals firm, BASF, to one small boutique ecotourism venture, which operates 2 reef tourism resorts in the Indian Ocean. So, it's like from the largest to the smallest of the companies. And the key message is, if you're interested in sustainability, if you want to become more sustainable and you are committed to that goal, you can't move in the right direction unless you know where you are and where you're going, which means you need to measure your impacts, right? You can't simply just, waffle and create nice publications. You need to measure what you're doing and the impacts of what you're doing. And I think that's really key. To be able to measure those impacts, you need to do the kind of valuation work that we do, that GIST does. And this is as applicable to the big corporations as it is to the small ones. In fact, as we speak, GIST is having conversations with the International Chamber of Commerce on how we can make our system called SME 360X available to small companies. And they're working on a collaborative project which hopefully can achieve that right now.
Oh, you're becoming more and more like us. That's good. So also because we are very focused on the SMEs also.
Yeah.
So now going more into the detail of your working. So nature works as an open system, but societies are, or as humans, are trying to break it always, or divide it and close it into fragments to gain control over them. Could you tell us how this disruption can affect such systems?
Yeah, it does. Seriously, you hit the nail on the head, Ben. I mean, the two, if I may describe it in my language, which is your language as well, which is that nationalization and privatization have been 2 of the biggest ills, which have made us confused about the value of public wealth. And if we look at the whole of nature, most of what nature provides is free by definition, right? Because nature doesn't issue any invoices for all the various services, the so-called ecosystem services, as we call them in science. Nature doesn't send any invoices. And when did a bee ever last send you an invoice for, this is pollination services for the month of May? Or when did the you an invoicing. Oh, this is my invoice for the air cleaning that I did in the month of April, May, and June, right?
Yeah.
For second water invoice. Have you ever received such an invoice? No. So these are free services, right? Nature provides what it does for free. And because of that, because it isn't respected by our modern world, where unless it's worth money and unless it's got a dollar value attached to it and unless it's traded in a marketplace, it's not worth anything. We disrespect nature. This is the essence of our problem, you see. And we have to stop thinking like that. We have to recognize the value of nature's services to society. These are nature's blessings, actually, right? These are nature's blessings and gifts to humankind, which we don't understand because we've got confused. We've got mesmerized by the magic of markets and sometimes forget that it's not just markets that define value, it's humans. Valuation is a human institution, right? And we need to bring that valuation concept back into the discourse, which it has got lost because we just narrow it down and sort of caricature it in the form of pricing. It's not about pricing, it's about valuation. There's a huge difference. Price is what you pay, value is what you receive. Nature provides huge value and you pay no price, right? So clearly there's a disconnect out there. You need to cure that disconnect.
Could you then tell us why ecological connectivity matters to wildlife and people concretely?
Well, I began with an economic example of that disconnection, right? Where you don't connect the value because you are thinking in terms of price. And in the same way, people don't connect the value of the system in which they exist, right? We are at the end, sadly, I have to tell you, we are close to the end of the Holocene, an epoch of 11,700 years, during which climate has been stable and during which all human progress that we are aware of, all the way from agriculture to rocket science, has taken place. This is because we've had the benefit of an inclement climate, stable climate, which has given us the ability to succeed. Regrettably, we humans tend to have a complicated sort of mix where we have space age technology together with the social maturity of the Middle Ages and the inner maturity of the Neanderthal, right? So we are kind of a mixed breed in that sense, this modern man, if I may call it that. That's analysis of our problems.
Exactly. I love your combination. I'm going to quote you on this. I wanted to ask you something. You know, like yourself, I'm also born in India, but I have seen how India has changed in 40 years with roads full of cycles. Even in my school, it was full of cycles. Today, it's only full of motorbikes.
Yeah.
And cars.
And everybody has air conditioner and things. I mean, when I was a kid, nobody had air conditioner. So there's an apparent conflict between social development and ecological connectivity. Is there a way to reconcile this?
There absolutely is. And this is where, again, learning gaps have to be cured. And thank you for doing this program, which is part of that job, which is that there is such a thing as a green economy. The whole point is that you can have greater well-being, better distributed, without destroying nature and without ruining the climate. And that is the direction that you need to go in. There is no point. I mean, today there are, almost $1 trillion of subsidies for fossil fuels. Why? If you calculate the costs of fossil fuels in the way that the IMF does, they put a price tag, value tag of more than $5 trillion because they account for the externalities, right?
Exactly.
Why are we subsidizing this? Why are we subsidizing unsustainable agriculture? Why are we subsidizing pesticides and fertilizers? Why can't we instead pay money to the people who are engaged in natural farming, for example? More than 750,000 such people in one of India's states. You're aware, Andhra Pradesh, right? In the east side of India. So we clearly, not just in India, but around the world, are moving things in a direction which we should not. And we have the ability to move them in the right direction, which is of a green economy. And I very much hope that, the people I refer to in Andhra Pradesh will have created a model which is a green economy model, at least within the space of agriculture, where they're following a path of agriculture which is giving them higher yield. Okay, so GDP is improving and therefore wealth is improving in the hands of the poor farmer. Lower cost because they're not having to spend on pesticides and fertilizers. Improved health, not just for themselves, because they are no longer falling prey to pesticide poisoning and kidney disease and so on, but also improved health of the soil, which is enabling them to get higher productivity. It's a positive feedback loop, right? And of course, increased land cover with mulching and therefore reduced evaporation losses. So therefore less use of water for the same agriculture. So less water scarcity. And of course, better benefits in terms of reduced climate emissions and so on, and better biodiversity, because you're not killing the soil biodiversity with pesticides and fertilizers.
Exactly.
So these are positive models which should be endorsed and embraced. We are instead wasting your taxes and my taxes on subsidizing the profits of chemical companies, right? In India, urea, which is the largest used fertilizer, is basically nitrogenous fertilizer, is still subsidized, right? It's embarrassing to say how much. That has to stop. You cannot be increasing those subsidies. You have to be reducing them, paying the money to the farmers and making them make their own choices as to what to do with that money. Not money as it happens in India right now, to private companies and public companies who are producing urea on a subsidized basis and selling it at 30 or 35% of the actual cost.
Exactly.
Pavan, but can I, because I have a very burning question, when is humanity facing some crisis like Corona, we can mobilize resources and then get billions of masks,
trillions.
Yeah, whatever,
Trillions,
trillions of masks, vaccine done, and then we can overcome the issue, right? Why here, even though we understand it's so important and crucial, we are still kind of leaning back and enjoying whatever is left on the planet instead of proactively solving the issues, and taking decisions, moving forward and applying new technology, which is out there, which is there. We have all the solutions out there, right? So why don't we put the money in there right away and save the planet? So what would you think?
That's a great question, and you've again pinpointed what is the key problem here. But there are unfortunately two reasons why what you're describing happens, which is that more than, I think, 10 to 15 trillion dollars were made available in various stages for addressing, and I'm glad that was done. I mean, it was a seriously dangerous. I'm saying it's still there, but it's at least a lot less harmful than it was 2 years ago. But COVID was useful to blow the lie that there is no money, right? That there was a chap many years ago called Bjorn Lomborg who would always ask the question, how are we going to save the climate and at the same time address poverty, and how will there be enough money? Bullshit. Where did the $15 trillion come from, right? So his lie has been nailed in retrospect, many years, 10 years after he wrote his lies. But the point is, we don't have to go down that route. We need to recognize that there are two forces at play. One is vested interests, which are preventing the investment of resources in a green economy, and they are the ones to attack. And it's unfortunately people like you and me who have to do this now, because governments won't, corporations won't, and it looks like the investors are too timid to do anything about it. So we, the people, have to move forward, right? So we have to attack those vested interests right now in a Gandhian way, politely and firmly, right? Not
we do it very politely, as you know, very politely.
Yeah, so let's do it in the Gandhian way, but you never know what happens next. So these people have to understand that game is up. Externalities, the negative costs that they have been inflicting on society, are the biggest free lunch in the history of the universe. And that free lunch has to stop, because it is immoral and it is damaging people constantly, right? Externalities have been described to me by a friend of mine who's also associated with my company as a crime. And I was a bit shocked to find this person saying that. I said, what? And explain. He says, well, if you are, as you describe, emitting air pollution, and you're doing that, that is a crime, isn't it? Because you can invest in cleaning up your act, but you're not doing it. And not only that, if it's causing death, then it's murder. So it's actually worse than a crime. It's actually murder. So it's not just theft. You're not just stealing somebody else's well-being. You're potentially killing that person as well. So these are the things that I think we need to. So I think the problem of vested interest has to be addressed. Only people will do it. Governments won't do it. Forget it. And investors might, if they understand the message that you and I are trying to put in terms of sustainable investing and investment sustainability, two separate things, but they connect. And the other side of the coin is education. How many people, and this is where communications and your channel and other such efforts come in, how many people actually understand these issues that we are talking about? How will people act unless they know the truth? The truth needs to be told. and needs to be told again and again and again.
And again and again, yeah.
I just wanted to add to this 2 points. One is about the crime. It is really true, because you must have read there has been a legal case against Bolsonaro now of crime against humanity because of the destruction of the Amazon forest. And there's a group, I don't know which NGO group, which has filed a case against him that what he's doing is responsible not only for death of many people in the Amazon, but the impact of the destruction of the forest is causing death to millions around the world. So it's a crime against humanity. That case has started. And secondly, what you mentioned about the, because you mentioned about this one, and the externalities. And the second one, what was your point? You mentioned
one was about, fixing the externalities, because that's what's the driver, right? So at the end of the day,
exactly.
And the other is creating the education, because unfortunately, the agents of change, which is policy from governments and investments from business and the investor universe, they're not actually moving in the right direction. And we're seeing a lot of greenwash, a lot of hogwash.
Exactly, that's the point.
A lot of eyewash, but we're not seeing enough investment in the right things still. So
exactly, but and also on the education point, if you look at it, I mean, if the US government spends $5 billion on some renewable energy, it's immediately everywhere in the news of the Fox News and everything. But the hundreds of billions which is going as subsidy to the fossil fuel, nobody knows about it. There's no news coverage, nothing.
But that's because of vested interest control over the media, right? So Fox News and other such, they are controlled by the same vested interests who want to continue in the fog artists of this world, fossil gas artists of this world. They want us to continue in that direction. They are talking, would you believe, appearing to be scientific, they're talking about adaptation. They have no clue, right? Let me see how they or their grandchildren will adapt to temperatures which are 2 to 4 to 5 degrees higher than average, let alone 30 and 40 degrees as we've seen in the North and South poles. Let me see what kind of adaptation they can do then.
Exactly. So you can understand my irritation when I have these discussions with these Republican representatives and this Fox News educated mass. They completely have somehow cut off from the reality, and they think we are living in a kind of propaganda world.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, the challenge, Ben, is that history does tell a story, but the story that this history will tell will be one of utter devastation. And unfortunately, the cause of the devastation will be known, the effects will be known, and people will wonder, how come this happened?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And that's where we come in. We have to make that change.
Yes, exactly. So we are here to make the change.
No more Hamlet complex, please. The time is out of point. Don't curse.
Exactly.
Yeah, just get on with it. Fix it.
I'm really glad that we can have such open discussion, but it's not always the case that people dare to talk so openly. So we really appreciate your honesty, Pavan.
Sure. And thank you.
Take the next question, whatever you want. We have a whole list.
Tell it about a GIST. So what is your market and who is your services aimed for? Because you mentioned you are going from corporate to the SMEs also. But can you go a bit further into it?
Sure thing. So, well, in terms of GIST, we are at present targeting two markets. One is, of course, the market for the corporate sustainability leader, who, when she realizes that she needs a change, will need to measure, okay, what do I change? Product? Do I change markets? Do I change location of my whatever cement factory so that the downwind impacts on human health are less? Do I select a different location for my next factory so that water scarcity and air pollution are addressed as against just turning out to be externalities? So we provide a lot of knowledge and insight on how to do business, where to do business, what's the impact of your business, how is it going to change if you make this decision or that decision. We do scenario analyses. So that's work for the corporation. So we do a bit of that. But what we are actually very excited by, and I guess this, Ben and Sveta, connects with your world of investment. We know that sustainable investing has become something that people want to do. But unfortunately, today, sustainable investments are still like $600 odd billion. And that's literally like a tiny fraction of 1% of the total investment universe. What we also need, in addition to sustainable investment, is investment sustainability. And investment sustainability means that today's massive investments should become more sustainable. That's what we focus on. So we are saying to the asset managers, guys, you are aware, guys, girls, whatever. So you are aware that today's externalities are tomorrow's risks and day after tomorrow's losses, right? If you're a private equity fund, the last thing on earth that you want is to discover in year 9 of a 10-year horizon that, oops, I've got a negative externality and now it's become a loss. How am I going to sell this damn thing? Right? You don't want that happening to you, do you? And likewise, in the world of public investment, the public equities, asset managers don't want to be advising and creating situations where people are sitting on massive stranded assets because they are stuck with fog companies, fossil oil and gas companies, or they are stuck with extremely damaging cement companies which have downwind effects on air pollution, or so on and so forth. So you don't want to be in that kind of portfolio. You want to know upfront, what are you investing in? And if there is a bit of danger, what is being done about the company in that direction? Is it going down? Is the impact intensity, as we call it, like the dollar impact on human health or the dollar impact on climate change per $1 million of revenue, we measure that, right? We calculate that. Is that going up, going down, or staying the same? If it's going down, well, that's good news. Let's find out. Let's verify that is actually happening. Talk to the company, pick up the phone. It still works. And talk and find out what's happening and see, is the going down effect that you're observing, is it true? Or if it's going up, then say, well, maybe I should watch out. Maybe I should exit now rather than wait for today's externality to become tomorrow's risks and day after tomorrow's losses. Before that happens, before the externality becomes internalized, let me get out of this, right? So we actually have to give people the ability to make those decisions, and that's what we do for the investors.
Exactly, because that's also, I was reading that some of our friends from the Rockefellers, they have already started disinvesting from fossil fuel. And if they are doing it, then who created their wealth from? Then there should be something to think about. So,
if the fortune built on Standard Oil is disinvesting from oil, that should tell you something, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was pointing to. But you also mentioned that you developed the world's first integrated profit and loss accounts. What is that?
Co-developed, I should say. We had collaborators, and TrueCost and GIST together created this. And we were, yes, it was the concept may have come from us, but we worked together with many collaborators, and TrueCost was the main one. And you know what? Let me say this. People think we are competitors, TrueCost and GIST. Yes, of course we compete for some business, but we respect each other and we work in the same direction. You can collaborate with your competitors. There's a message I want people to go away with, right? So we worked together on the integrated profit and loss, which was basically looking at the impacts of a company on natural capital, human capital, social capital, and financial capital. And since TrueCost was already working on the natural capital side, that is my company, GIST, said, oh, well, we are working together. We were assisting them in their research as well. We had some of their research people with us. So we said, look, there's no point fighting over this. Let's work together. So we collaborated. They did the natural capital impacts. We did the human, social, and produced capital impacts. And we produced an integrated profit and loss. Four capitals picture of the impacts of the corporation. And we did that for a few companies, BASF and Tata Chemicals in India. And even before that, around the same time, actually. It was all concurrent, really. There were three companies that were interesting, all in the chemical sector. So there was a bit of clearly, first going on around there at that time.
Pavan, what is actually GIST stands for? What is the abbreviation
made? Today, GIST's abbreviation stands for Global Initiative for a Sustainable Tomorrow. So that's the initiative.
Now you know.
Now I know.
That's the acronym. But GIST, by the way, also stands for the essence of something. And what we are saying is that we are giving you the essence of the company. We're giving you a total picture of this company. What is its impact, not just on the shareholder, but also on its employees, also on society, and on nature, all of them at the same time.
And how long does it take to get the essence? So in practical process, when somebody comes to you to get the essence, how long do they need to wait, and how's the process going?
There's good news. In the old days, when we were, and old days is like, 4 or 5 years ago, when we were working with mainly companies and we hadn't started work with investors, the whole effort would take between 3 and 6 months because there's so much data to process. Then we realized, we now know 20 different sectors pretty well because we've done these projects again and again and again. Why don't we just put all of this onto a database and write the code so that all of this calculation doesn't have to be done by hand, right? And now the machine does it. So there's, of course, effort in pulling together disclosed data from public companies. The machine, the cognitive search engine, reads information from the company's sustainability report, from the GRI database, from here, from there, et cetera, pulls it all together, takes all of our factors, wind speeds from Copernicus satellite downloads and so on and so forth, and water scarcity from maps that have been created and researchers. We collectively, my research team has spent something like 220 person years putting together the impact data that we have. I mean, it's ridiculous the amount of effort, but this is what I mean, right? This is hard work. And
Yeah.
nowadays it's not, hard work is not fashionable. Let me tell you this, right? It's just not fashionable. And even though, people I admire, like J.R.D. Tata, one of the CEOs of the Tata Group, and it's still a quotation which is there in the Tata Groups in India. When you go to the CEO's offices, you find it. Nothing worthwhile is ever achieved without deep thought and hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And people like do the deep thinking, but they don't want to do the hard work.
I have to tell that. Exactly. I have to tell that to my teenage son. So when you're talking about accounting, so what is GIST's approach to quantifying impacts, and how do you do that? Because that sounds very, very unique.
No, it is. It's a complex exercise. So the first step is framework. Like, you need to, what should you measure and why, right? So clearly there's impacts on the environmental side, there's impacts on the shareholders, there's impacts on employees, and there's impacts on society. What things should you measure to get the answer? So the first challenge is the framework challenge. Let's agree a framework. And thankfully, and this is the good news, when Trucost, GIST, and our other collaborators pulled our thoughts together on what do we do, we agreed on the framework on the environmental side, natural capital side, as we call it. Later on, when GIST spearheaded this development of the framework, and it was picked up, among others, by the by the human and social capital protocols, that was great, because all of those ideas were absorbed. We were happy for them to be absorbed, and we have a framework. Now we have the Value Balancing Alliance, which has again enhanced that framework and presented it as a collaborative effort, not just of different leading corporations, but also of all four of the big accountancy firms: Pricewaterhouse, KPMG, Ernst & Young, Deloitte. Now that's good news, because if the major audit firms agree that this is the way forward to measure that framework, to measure the impacts using that framework, hopefully there'll be consensus. I believe it's coming through the work of the Value Balancing Alliance, and hopefully people will start using that framework and the methodologies. Methodologies means, once you've decided the framework, as in what should you value and why, how should you do it? And I'll give you a small example. It's not straightforward, right? Now, it's common sense that, okay, if you destroy a forest which is close to an agricultural area, that means the nutrients and the fresh water that used to come pulled together by the forest, which went to the fields of the poor farmers, is going to stop because you destroyed the forest. Now, how do you measure that impact? Well, you could say, okay, well, it used to provide, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, to fertilize the agriculture. I know that volume of NPK doesn't happen, and it's got a cost, because now I have to buy NPK fertilizers. So I'm going to follow the cost-based approach. Find out what's the volume of NPK that comes from natural systems, and it's not coming there anymore. Now it has to be brought in the form of fertilizer. I need to work that. So cost-based. The other way you can do it is that, okay, we know the yield and productivity before the forests were destroyed, and we now know the yield and productivity minus, of course, the impact of fertilizer. So let's calculate the production function of agriculture with and without the forests and wetlands and other nature to support you and in its productivity, and see the change in the production function and measure the market value of that. That's another way of calculating these impacts. Completely different. So there are two methodologies, right? Cost-based approach.
Do they come to the same result, Pavan, or similar results? No?
They don't.
No?
Well, it's comparable, but it's not the same. It's never the same, right? So there's
similar or very different?
Well, order of magnitude same, but actually quite different.
So, what do you then take as an end result?
No, so this is why you need consensus, right? So we could say that let's go with a cost-based approach, and that's fine. But then you are predicating that on the logic that, well, ultimately you'll have to run agricultural business with pesticides and fertilizers and so on. Well, that's probably a wrong conclusion, right? So I would advocate for the the production function approach, which is with and without that nature, what happens to the productivity of the agricultural area. So I would personally, and just would go for the production function. But you know what? Neither is wrong, right? They're just two different methodologies for calculating the impacts, positive impacts in this case, of nature on agricultural productivity.
We are running out of time, but we still have a couple of questions we want to ask you. One of those is how WWF and your company GIST complement each other on their mission to preserve the environment.
Well, we are actually different parts of the picture, right? So WWF focuses on nature and nature conservation, and works with policymakers and works with other NGOs, and works especially with local communities to be able to help conserve nature for the benefit of people. So that's what they do. What we do is really see, all of us are parts of the big picture, but we can at best be the perfect pixel for what in the spot that we are. The spot that we are is ensuring that companies and their investors have the means of valuing the impacts of the company properly, which means accounting for all impacts, not just impacts on shareholders, but the impacts on stakeholders. And of course, if you think about it, 2/3 of the economy is private sector. And if every private sector corporation could measure its impacts correctly and disclose them to the public, everyone, including the NGOs, WWF, and the various people they work with, the governments and the communities, would understand the truth. The truth would be out there. So yes, we do complement each other. We work in our perfect pixel and they work in their many, many different perfect pixels. And we have to put in the effort to make those pixels perfect. Otherwise, the picture will not happen. That's the whole point.
Then maybe coming to the last question, what is the main challenge GIST is facing or will face in the future, you think, and how are you planning to tackle it?
Well, it's scaling really is the biggest challenge. So I guess there are two challenges. And scaling is the overall challenge, but within the scaling challenge comes adoption. So why should people publish? Why should people calculate their performance in terms of 4 capital's impacts when so far for the last 100 years they've been asked to calculate only one, financial capital? And there's a whole sort of culture of looking at shareholder primacy and looking at shareholder return as the way in which you measure performance and reward CEOs and the entire C-suite. Why should we do this? Well, you will do this because this is the right thing to do, because it is truth, it is happening, and to pretend that it's not happening is a lie. So stop lying. That's the reason you will do this.
I love that. But then, Pavan, how can our audience help you with your mission, help GIST? Are you looking for partners, or how can the audience help you to scale your mission and that more people start measuring impact, more corporations, so we get it tackled?
Yeah, well, we are actually, we seek partnerships, and we have been very fortunate to have some amazing partnerships. So on the corporate side, we are close collaborators of the Value Balancing Alliance. In fact, at Davos recently, I was actually presenting to various people, pulling together Value Balancing Alliance estimates for them to see of what companies would look like if they were measured in 4 capital dimensions. So we have that collaboration, and we are looking for some others as well. On the investor side, for the asset managers, we have a great collaboration for the last year with MSCI. Now, MSCI is the world's largest provider of ESG ratings, as you know, almost 40% of the market. But they're keen that they should also provide impacts, and they chose us. They chose us because of the quality of the science and the economics that we apply in the impact calculations that we do. So they like what we do and the way we do it and the rigor with which we approach our work. It is totally scientific and economics. There's no judgment.
So when is it going to happen, this collaboration, this MSCI?
It's already started. So today, if you log into MSCI, if you're a client of MSCI, you can go in and search for impacts, and you'll find the GIST impacts there. You just have to log into their system called ESG Manager. It's a system that does many things, but among the things that it does is to provide GIST impacts to any of MSCI's investors. So it's already there. And the second collaboration, equally important, that we're working on was FNZ, who is one of our investors. It's basically, FNZ is one of the world's leading providers of technology to the wealth management sector, but they're also one of the world's leading fund administrators. Okay, so they are keen that they should use GIST impacts as what they call FNZ impacts. We're basically taking our impact numbers and our data and providing it to the wealth management sector. So these two, the asset management side, MSCI largely, and the wealth management largely, FNZ, are existing collaborations, and MSCI has already started. We've got our first couple of clients via MSCI, a collaboration. Yes.
I think, I feel your happiness from inside because, you hunted them with impact measurement, you left the financial sector, and then you still impact.
Yes.
Right? Isn't it amazing? Pavan, just very, very last, I promise. Can you share a call to action message to our global audience, please?
Well, global audience, I'll have to say, for everyone, whether you are parents or citizens or scientists or businessmen or government officers, whatever it is, please, when looking at a company, insist on the full picture. Insist on the total picture of the company. Do not ask for only the profit and loss accounts and balance sheet of the company. Ask them to present their full picture. No lying. Whole truth. Nothing but the truth.
Thank you so very much.
Thanks so
Pavan.
much, Pavan. As a little thank you, we'd like to invite to join our community Chamomile.
Yeah.
And when you register there, we will upgrade it to premium membership, of course, and also provide you Impact Leader certificate that you and GIST are truly creating impact in our world. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank
Appreciate
you
your
very much, Pavan.
So, dear viewers, with this, the second episode of season 5 is finished. Do subscribe on our YouTube channel, Swiss Impact, youtube.com/Swiss Impact.
Exactly.
And then you will be always updated about newest information in impact investing sector and in the world, I would say even.
Exactly. Till now.
Yes.
So looking forward to seeing you next Friday. And once again, we invite all really impactful businesses who are seeking support or investment. Please contact us and come on our show.
Absolutely. And remember, you got more when you give back.
So always invest with impact.
Bye for now.
Bye. Hi, we hope you enjoyed this episode of TV show Swiss Impact with Banerjee.
Make sure you check out the next one and also find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Spotify, podcasts, and any of your favorite social media places.
And please subscribe to our channel so you know when we release new episodes.
And also leave us some feedback to help us grow this awesome impact community and join it.
We look forward to sharing the next episodes with you, and until then, you get more when you give back.
So always invest with impact.